Just to understand who my audience is, how many here have a NADCAP accreditation? Raise your hands. Okay, back there. Or AS9100 or any kind of certification, raise your hand. Okay, a few more. Good. So I'm sure you guys love the audits when they happen, right? Show of hands. How many love a good audit? There you go. That's the key there. The key word is good. So my objective here today is to share our experiences at Veterans Metal. I bought a 27-year-old metal finishing shop in 2020 in the middle of COVID. And it was when I came back from Kenya. I was the CIO of Airtel Africa. Decided, well, do I want to retire or am I not ready for retirement? Kind of like what Dana was talking about earlier. Wasn't ready for retirement yet. And so we decided to move to the Tampa Bay area where we want to eventually retire one day. And so we looked at different companies and we found this old 27-year-old metal finishing shop was completely analog, completely manual. They were definitely still stuck in sometime in the late 80s, early 90s. And it was just a great experience to be able to acquire a company and then completely transform it, because that was the objective, was to transform the business. So what I'm going to hopefully share with you today is some of that transformation and how we went from a manual shop, which is labor intensive when it comes to audits, I discovered, because we did our first audit in the old shop. NADCAP audit, and got accredited for anodizing. We do three things: anodizing, chemical conversion, stainless steel passivation. But then in the new shop, as part of the digital transformation process, we changed all that. No more manual, no more paper and pencil. Everything was digitally connected in some way. So I'm hoping to share that with you. To put it in context, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a 2-minute video to show that transformation project. It was definitely a labor of love for about 19 months. We had 22 different vendors involved in the transformation project. We were in a 5,000 square foot facility, 10-foot ceilings, no air conditioning, including the offices didn't have air conditioning. We had little portable units in there. And we moved into a brand newly constructed building, 15,000 square feet. We're going to add another 5,000 next year, and it was all brand new. So the only thing I brought with me from the old shop was people, no equipment of any kind. So let me show you that brief video so you can get a flavor for it. That's the old shop there. A lot of activity today. Well, there you go, 19 months of work captured in 2 minutes and 20 seconds. As you can see, it was a major transformation for our shop. Definitely a labor of love, a lot of ups and downs, but we were successfully able to complete it. We've now been in our new facility for a year and a month, so we just celebrated our first anniversary in the new facility. Why did I show you that video? Because I wanted to show you where we came from. A lot of these shops across the country are in that old state, right? Manual, heavy paper, heavy pencil. And one of the dreams that I had was to definitely convert the shop and take advantages of efficiency through digital transformation. I just want to echo what Dana said. I don't work for Steelhead. I don't get paid by them. We pay our fees just like everybody else. But it's important to highlight when we have a partner. And Steelhead has been an incredible partner in our transformation project. So let's just make sure we understand what NADCAP is before we get into some of the things we do. We were the first in the country to use a digital system to do our output for NADCAP audits. So the auditor was there, everything we produced, like the job audits, for example, was all done out of Steelhead, as just one example. Well, our QMS, Steelhead supported that as well, so we're certified not only in quality management system, which is 7004, but we're also accredited in our chemical processing 7108 and various what's called slash sheets. So NADCAP is the National Aerospace Defense Contractors Accreditation Program. They started in 1990. There was a demand to focus on quality. I know a little bit about that because when I was in the Air Force, I was the Quality Assurance Program Manager for 2 major commands. So very heavy on quality. It was in my space. And I got out in the 90s. So that was a time where there was a lot of focus in that because there was a lot of accidents. National Transportation Safety Board was, you look at flights today, right, compared to maybe 20, 30 years ago, there was accidents quite often you were hearing about, and a lot of it had to do with quality issues. It's a global program, so it's not just here in the US, it's all over the world. They're focused mainly on aerospace engineering, defense, and related industries. And of course, their board members include all what's called prime, so things like Lockheed, Honeywell, Raytheon, which are some of my end customers. What's the responsibility of PRI? PRI is the Performance Review Institute. That's who administers our audits and manages those programs. I don't know if you guys know, it's a 501, it's a nonprofit organization. Last year, I think they generated about $50 million in revenue. They're all over the world, and there's a big demand. There's a huge backlog in audits. Many times, audits get postponed because they don't have enough auditors. That's why they're using contractors to perform some of these audits as well. And I'm going to get into a little bit about that a little later. There's 4 main things that they do. Establishing audit criteria. The second thing is training auditors. The third is conducting audits. And the fourth, granting accreditation. That's it. Those are their 4 main responsibilities. The role of the auditors, or NADCAP or PRI, is not to invent criteria, right? So their role is to take industry standards and see if you're in compliance with those industry standards. If you have an auditor that comes into your plant or facility and says something that's not in the spec or it's not part of a aerospace standard, then you can challenge that. I've challenged things, and I'll give you some examples later on. So here's an example. So this is right out of the mil-spec 8625, which is the mil-spec for anodizing. The corresponding sheet for NADCAP is 7108, which is chemical processing. The slash sheet is the slash 8, which is for anodizing. And this is what they're auditing on. Are you complying with this spec? If they add to this, they're wrong, right? Because remember, they hire contractors, and some of them have their own opinions. I'll give you a good example. When we did the first audit in 2022, the auditor said, you're supposed to use DI water for your seal. And that is absolutely false. That is not what it says in the spec. The spec says you can use DI water as an example, such as, that's what the spec says. So you can use any aqueous material as long as in the end you're passing your periodic testing. So I had that printed out. I also contacted their head of NADCAP for chemical processing, which is Nigel Cook out of England. I wanted him to confirm it. He sent me an email, so I had those things ready. So when I gave it to him, he said, oh, I'm sorry, you're right, right? So don't assume because the auditor tells you that this is the way it's supposed to be, it is. No, they're supposed to be there to check on your compliance to existing standards, not made up ones because the auditor did it that way in his shop. A lot of people don't realize that. Right now, NADCAP is going through a point of inflection. A lot of shops like mine perceive it to be a bit outdated. If you look at the handbook that's provided by PRI, by NADCAP, and you look at the examples, for example, of their traveler cards or their PO checklist, you can tell it was typed on an IBM Selecta 3 typewriter. How many remember the IBM Selecta 3 typewriters? That's still there today in the handbook as an example, right? So it's kind of backwards thinking, right? They're still stuck in an old mode. And I will be attending, by the way, their annual user conference in Pittsburgh this October to talk to my peers and to PRI about advancing their state of mind, their mentality, digital transformation. I've been in many conversations with Jay Solomon, who's the president of PRI. He's very proactive and very receptive to advancing NADCAP into the future, into a digital age, and getting out of the old. This is one thing I just mentioned about their handbooks, very outdated. But their objective of PRI also, it's in their mission statement, to make it cost effective. Last week, we all got an email, if you're NADCAP accredited, they're going up 4% in January, right? So they keep raising the price every year. A lot of it has to do with cost, travel cost, right? The auditor, they're outsourcing this stuff. These are not employees. They travel from different parts of the world to perform these audits. So a big part of that cost is that. And also, they're basing it on how long it normally takes to do an audit in the old way of thinking, right? In the manual way of thinking, pencil and paper. So example, my chemical processing audit for 3 different major processes is 3 days. But if we use a digital output system, why does it have to take 3 days, right? It shouldn't have to. My quality management system was a 2-day audit. Okay, why? Because again, it's an old way of thinking, the manual process. And when they're going to come to my next audit here in 2024, I want to see how fast they go. Because we just did our audit in April using Steelhead, and he was running out of things to do, right? Because we're just going so fast, because everything was there at the fingertips. Now, what's some of our responsibilities? We had many to achieve audits. One is the document review process. One of the things we did in 2022, when we were still manual, the amount of paperwork involved. I'm sure if I say an example, you guys are going to resonate with it. When you're in a manual shop, it's all analog, and you're working, your hottest tank is 160 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's hot in Tampa Bay in the middle of summer. The last thing an operator wants to do is fill out paperwork while he's running the parts, right? They're doing it at the end of the day. And typically, when they're doing it at the end of the day, they're just pencil whipping the whole thing, right? They're just filling out, oh yeah, this was 5 minutes, this was 10 minutes, yeah, that was the voltage, and that was the amp. And they just repeat everything. Or they maybe change it by 1 digit, but that's what they're doing, all right? They're human, right? At the end of the day, they are exhausted. So that's part of our responsibility, is the document review process. Training competence, it's another part that's being evaluated during an audit certification. Any certification or any accreditation is that your ability to train your people. What proof do you have that you've trained them and trained them well? Equipment calibration and maintenance. You have to prove per that audit that your equipment has been calibrated. Does it have the calibration sticker? Is it certified? Do you have documentation to prove that you had it calibrated on a routine basis? Again, a requirement on us. Chemical management. We have a lot of chemistry in my shop. Thank God we use software for it. In the past, it was, first of all, our lab was non-existent. It was like a little folding table with a little chemistry set, and it was just very poor. But it was so labor intensive, and I really had doubts about the results, right? It wasn't, I don't feel it was accurate at the time when we bought the business. It was kind of also another pencil whipping function. But again, you have to demonstrate that to an auditor. Quality control, demonstrate your quality control functions. Do you maintain your nonconformance reports? Do you maintain your RMAs? Do you maintain your corrective action reports? How do you maintain those? Those are things you have to present to prove that you have a quality management system in place. Risk management, how are you maintaining risk? Parts control is a big part of it. Counterfeit is a big part of it. Especially, for my particular business, 75% we do is actually goes to the Department of Defense, right? So there's a CUI information. Now we're talking about cybersecurity as well. So all these things during a NADCAP audit, especially parts control, risk management, counterfeit parts, we have to demonstrate and prove through some means. Supplier control. How do you vet your suppliers? Do you show that you're actually checking them on an annual basis? Are you doing supplier surveys? Are you giving supplier feedback? That's part of the audit as well. That's your responsibility. Internal audits. You're required to perform internal audits. Plus, you have to do a pre-audit in order to do your submission prior to the actual audit taking place on your premises. Our responsibility again. And continuous improvement, showing that you are continuously improving your process. And I put the word some on purpose, because these are just some of the things we have to do in order to prove that we are in compliance of standards. And imagine how much paperwork is involved in this. And if you're a small shop, in the state of Florida, we have 24,000 manufacturers. 80% are 20 employees or less. When I bought the business, it was just 4 employees. We have 16. We're going to add another 8 over the next 6 months, so we're growing really rapidly. But I wear many hats, all right? And one of them is to prepare for these audits, right? That was one of my hats, along with my plant manager. So it's labor intensive to be prepared for these audits, and it's very disruptive. Anyone tells me it's not disruptive, you're lying, because when you add an auditor in your premises, first of all, you're preparing for their arrival, making sure that all your T's are scratched off, your I's are dotted, and then when they get on site, it's very disruptive when they're there, especially if they're there for an entire week for 5 days, like in our case. Past audit compliance method, I'm going to give you some examples. It was all paper and pencil, nothing was connected. So that was how we were capturing our anodized tank, number 3, our temperatures on a daily basis, right? So imagine, this is being captured, right? But it's not connected to anything. It's not going anywhere. This was one example. Another example here, so these were traveler cards at a part level that we were using, that I inherited. And my daughter, who's the office supervisor, is here. She'll tell you we had file cabinet after file cabinet after file cabinet of these cards of parts. And how many of these were duplicated? It was just crazy. We mentioned that we don't have them anymore. They got scanned and shredded because we're a 100% paperless shop now, no paper. But that was how we were maintaining the traveler cards at a part level. Then we've got the pH checks, right? We had the daily pH checks. This is the monthly, this is my favorite. So my predecessor was doing his stuff in-house for salt spray test. So you have to check to see if it could handle a salt chamber for 7 days or 14 days, depending on the process you were checking. And so I had these sheets that said pass with little check marks, and I asked, well, how are you doing that? and the description I got was very odd. This is very suspect for me, right? This quality aspect. We today outsource all our periodic testing to a third party. We do not do any in-house. Why? Because that's not our core business. Our core business is to run parts per spec. So why should I have to be afraid of sending it to a third party? Because all my colleagues in my neighborhood that does metal finishing say, oh, don't, because if you fail, they're gonna have to do a recall and all that stuff. We've been doing this now for 2.5 years and we've never had an issue, right? And it shows integrity on our part too to our customers, right? When we provide these really professional high-end reports from these third-party NADCAP accredited periodic facilities, right? So that was one example. And the last one here, believe it or not, my predecessor, that's how he was doing invoicing. Right, so those are the invoice numbers, the customer, the amount, and the check he got, right? So I want to put it in context. What we were doing was so incredibly inefficient. And it's important because even in NADCAP, you have to show control of your purchase order process, right? Do you have all the basic information? If you go to the handbook in NADCAP, it'll say, does it have a part number? Does it show the material type? Does it show the process type? Is it referring to a spec? Is it a current spec? All these things are on a checklist, and if you're missing one thing, it's a minor finding, right? So this is just a great example here, real examples of my old shop of what it used to be like. I'm going to give you a list of future compliance methods, not necessarily particular to Steelhead. There are many things that Steelhead does cover. There are some things that are not part of Steelhead, maybe a different party or maybe PRI themselves. One is digital documentation management. We use a combination of Steelhead, but we also pay for Google Drive services because it has version control. And then we're working on other things to focus on CUI, which is control unclassified information for the future of cybersecurity. Another one is audit management software. So we do regular audits. We have some things that are audited on a monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual basis. That's all done through our software. Most of that is in Steelhead today. Mobile applications. I'm a big fan of mobile applications. Not just Steelhead, but everything in my shop is connected. So right now on my phone, I could tell you exactly from my new state-of-the-art waste treatment plant how much waste have I treated and dumped into the city sewer at this very moment. So if it's not within the flow rate parameters, upper and lower control limits, I get notified and alert, right? Why is that important? Well, one, you want to be in compliance, especially with EPA, right? But also, it costs money. You're paying for money coming to your plant. You're paying for stuff going to the sewer, right? There's a cost involved. So I want to know that my flow rate is correct. So I'm a big fan of mobile application utilization. Cloud-based platforms, we're not in the IT business, right? The only thing I have in my plant are laptops and desktops, right? I don't have servers or some IT, no. Everything is in the cloud through a third-party provider, whether it's my chemical analysis, which I use Anaplex for, or whether it's my MES, which I use Steelhead for, or some of the other things that I was mentioning about the water discharge, that's all in the cloud. I do not maintain any equipment because why? That is not my business. I'm not in the IT business. I'm in the metal finishing business, right? So I outsource that. Data analytics and reporting tool, a lot of that comes from Steelhead. I'm going to provide some examples of that, because that then in turn provides information for our NADCAP audit process. Chemical management software I was mentioning, I use a combination of both Steelhead and Anaplex. The Anaplex provides my upper and lower control limits. It has all the standards already preloaded, whether it's military standards or general standards, like Boeing has their own standards, right? And so that's already been preloaded, and it tells me how much to add or how much to decant. It does it automatically for me, and it keeps control and does all my trend analysis for me. Real-time monitoring systems, again, I'm a big believer in proactive systems, right? What's the biggest problem with an analog shop? You don't know it's broken until it's broken, right? You know there's a problem until it breaks. And then you have to worry about lead times. You got to order something. My old shop, we used heaters, electric heaters for all the tanks. We got rid of all the electric heaters. Now we have a natural gas boiler system that heats all my tanks automatically. 6:15 in the morning, it kicks on, and it monitors within plus or minus 2 degrees, right? And it notifies me through my phone if I have an issue, right? And then if we feed that information through into Steelhead as part of my NADCAP audit, which I'll show you some examples in a minute. Electronic data and capturing tools. Again, it goes back to Steelhead, mainly in this case. We were one of the early adopters. I'm not sure how many other early adopters in using a QR code scanning system. You see they've got some sample tanks over there. We implemented that on day one. So all our tanks are using QR codes. And so I have a scanner, just like you see at the grocery store. It's the same kind of Android handheld scanner. And my linesmen are always scanning the ins and outs. It gives them a lot of real-time information. They're able to do real-time updates to that information. All our processes, all our chemical recipes are at a part level, so every part is unique. We don't treat one shop fits all, and because of the software we're using in Steelhead, we're able to do that. And what we get repeatability, right? My rework rate went way down when we digitized the shop, all right? Because if you got Johnny doing it one day and Tommy doing the same part the next day, they never did it the same, all right? Now they do it the same every single time. Automated reporting system, and I'm going to give you an example of an automated report. And by the way, at the end of the presentation, it's a little QR code. You can just scan that. It'll have contact information for the business, but I think my phone number is there. I'm happy to send you real PDF files of our job audits for NADCAP. Like for example, the anodized is 7 pages long because it captures everything from start to finish. I'm happy to send that to you as an example so you can see what the output looks like. So all you gotta do is just email me, or if you want to have a phone call, I'm open for that as well. And the last one is audit capabilities. This is my favorite. It's not happening today, but I envision, and one of the things I'm going to be talking about in Pittsburgh in October to the PR people is to help us reduce this cost of our audits. There's no reason why we can't use augmented reality, where an auditor can be anywhere in the world and visit my shop and perform the audit without physically coming. That's still a ways. And it's going to be hard for people to adopt. There's people that just love the fact they're using pencil and paper and has to be physically present to do things. I don't believe you have to. All right, there's enough technology out there that you can virtually do these audits. All you have to do is set up some cameras in the shop. Your auditor has an AR headset. You have another individual like myself having another headset, and we're walking together through my shop in order for them to perform the audit. That is totally doable. That is coming. But I got to convince the people who've been doing it the same way for 30, 40 years. Right? That's the challenge. Now let's look at using Steelhead for NADCAP audits. So these are some of the bullet points of what I use it for. There are other things that I'll be able to use it for as well, but there's real-time data collection, process monitoring, traceability and genealogy, automated reporting, quality management, trend analysis, and compliance management. All these things feed into getting your audit. And I can tell you when we implemented the first software in the old shop, which was Anaplex, he spent literally 30 minutes on that part of the audit. Because, oh yeah, I know Anaplex. Oh yeah, there's your upper locator. Okay, let me see your trend analysis. Okay, you're good to go. You check that off. It was done, right? The same thing happened when we implemented Steelhead, and we're using it for our job audits and some of our QMS functionality as well. If you're a user of Steelhead, you should be familiar with this page. These are the operational tiles. The ones that I'm highlighting now are the ones that we use in some way feed into a NADCAP audit output. There may be more, but these are the ones that we used in our last audit in April. So let me show you an example of the purchase order. So my daughter, who's the office supervisor, and the rest of her staff, they use this as the part of the NADCAP checklist. This checklist is directly from the audit criteria, right? And if they don't check something off, they get notified, hey, is this a yes or no? You can make anything required in Steelhead. You want to make it not required, that's fine. The point is that it's on our checklist, right? And it's exact mirror image of what was typed on that IBM Selecta 3 sometime in circa 1990. Right? So that's now in Steelhead. And what's great about this is, in my old shop, there were some things like a part number, for example, we had to enter it by pencil 5 different places, right? A part number, 5 different places, a customer, 5 different places, quantities, 5 different places. I mean, it was just nuts. This feeds into everything. It feeds into the reporting output. It feeds into your certifications, because some customers require certs, right? Apart from your audit outputs for NADCAP. But all this, you enter it once and it's done. And then you decide how you want it to feed into other things. Here's a good example. Randy's my plant manager. He's here with us today. So this is Randy. He made the cover of Product Finishing Magazine in December, where we actually were featured there. Yeah, you see, very famous. You'll sign autographs later, Randy. We were featured with Steelhead, the future of auditing, right? Of how to make this a digital process. So what Randy does every morning, or his delegate, will go ahead and enter every morning, and we don't have this connected yet, but all our tanks have monitors that are going to what's called an HMI controller, right? It's what controls my compressor that actually opens and closes the valves for hot and cold water to come into the tanks, right? And so he makes a note of all the temperatures for all the tanks that morning, enters into Steelhead one time. That then translates into all the jobs for that day. And then also, what does that serve? It serves as a maintenance function, right? Are we not within parameters? A temperature broke can go bad, right? So there's several things that it feeds into, but it does feed into our NADCAP reporting, because we're required to show at what temperature do you run that job at. So anodize, type 2, 67 plus or minus 3. Hard coat, 34 plus or minus 2. That's our recipe. By the way, no mel spec says what temperature is supposed to be. You just have to pass the periodic testing, right? That just happens to be what works for us, and we can successfully pass all our testing. Just a note. So if you get an auditor says, well, that's supposed to be 69.5. No, it has to pass test. I can make it 100, even though it's not going to work, but I can make it what I want to. But the point is, I'm showing that I have control of my process. That's what they're looking for in the audit. Here's one of the reports out of Steelhead. So this one shows pHs. There's a measurement criteria. It's already here. These are the trend analysis. This is for my hexavalent, trivalent, my seal tanks. And when I have little peaks and valleys like this, it's a great conversation as part of my daily production meeting, right? And what's the issue here? You know, why did we have these peaks and valleys? So I use this trend analysis information as part of my daily, I have a daily production meeting every day. I have it with my plant manager, then I have it with the office staff, and then I have it with my QA lab lead. So it's 3 different things that I have, 30 minutes each, that's it, all right? And we use Steelhead, and this is just one example of the reporting, but this information ends up going to the NADCAP job audit report, right? So you're gonna see the job audit report here in just a moment. So here's an example. This is the page out of Steelhead. This is a 7-page report for anodized class 2 for my customer FK Instrument. They've been around for 75 years, one of our top 3 customers in the company. And this is the first page. And it's in step order, right? Already in Steelhead. So this is a template that I've already created, and it populates from all the data entry, whether it came from the work order, whether it came from the sales order, whether it came from the daily maintenance. But it all aggregates and gets into our report. And this example is that 71.8/8, and this is straight out of Steelhead. Now I'm happy to send you a copy of the entire report if you guys want it. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's look at the header, for example. So again, the source information. So standard template for all my major processes. So it's already been pre-populated. This comes from the work order. This comes from the work order. This comes from the data entry that Randy does in the morning. And this also comes from the work order. Again, it's an example of efficiency, right? I am 8 times more efficient when we moved into our new shop. Now we're even more efficient because we've learned after we moved into the new shop. But an 8x factor from old to new, right? And I used to be able to process no more than 50,000 parts a month in the old shop. My predecessor could only do 25, we did 50, so we maxed it out. The new shop has a capacity of doing 1 million parts a month, so we have a lot of growth, right? A lot of runway ahead of us. Right now we're running about 180,000 parts a month. So, and we're growing very rapidly. But to show you an example of the header and where the information comes from, straight out of Steelhead. Again, this is my daughter there with our senior linesman, Lionel. He's been doing this for 35 years. One of the original people that I started with from day one. First step, of course, is QMS inbound inspection, right? QMS 09, we have all our quality management system documents. It's already been preloaded in Steelhead. And when they bring up the lines, we use iPads and scanners, right? Everybody has an iPad and their own personal login. That person who's doing that inbound inspection has a criteria to follow. They'll follow that step and they'll check it off, and then it marks it. What does it do? It also gives me who did it, right? Because Lionel used his login, and the timestamp. By the way, this is an old example. It's no longer GMT stuff here. It looks like this now. But it came from routine work that we're doing every day using our equipment. The bottom half, again, using the QR code scanners. What did I capture here? Again, what are the auditors looking for? They're looking for that you have a standard and that you're following a standard. So in this case, the first tank is an industrial cleaner. How many parts did I process? 5. What was the measurement that was taken by Randy? It was in the industrial cleaner for a little over 2 minutes in this particular case. Pass criteria is more than 2, less than 10. The unit of measurement is time in the tank, and when did it happen? Okay, that's what the auditor is looking for. The point is, this is real. It's not pencil whipped. And you can see them here. That's the scanner there. There's Randy again. Randy, you're very popular today. So you can see the very first tank, the soap tank, and him scanning it. We're running about simultaneously anywhere between 6 to 8 jobs at the same time. Some of these racks contain 3 or 4 work orders at the same time. So we can have many jobs running simultaneously, but we're using the scanner to not to have to worry about that. And plus the scanner also tells us that we're doing the right thing, right? So this scanner is, what I tell my auditor, I show him this, he says, how do you make sure you don't put it in the wrong tank? Well, Steelhead's telling me it's the wrong tank, right? Because when they're scanning it, they'll say, no, it's the wrong tank, right? There's a little eye candy there. It'll tell you that you have to go to this tank. This is the next tank you have to go to. There's a countdown, right? Green, yellow, red, telling you how long it should be in the tank for so you don't exceed your values, right? It's all about repeatedly, I don't want my people to be computers, right? I want them to use tools. All I want them to do is use their head when it comes to development of the recipes of those parts when we get them for the first time. And then we actually have a strategy meeting, we have a contract review meeting, which is also part of Steelhead, to review what that recipe is going to be. Once it's done, it's done. The linesman just has to follow it. Water break is another big issue. If you're in the anodizing world or chem film world, that's a criteria, that's a mil-spec requirement. And a lot of people get a minor finding because they're not performing water break tests. What's cool about it in Steelhead, if it doesn't pass the visual water break, Steelhead will force you to go back again and start again to the previous tank until you say you've passed it. We have 3 inspections. We have inbound, post-process, and outbound inspections in our shop. If you say you passed it, you're going to have a problem with the plant manager disciplinary-wise because you've just pencil whipped it digitally. That's the only thing, right? But what's great about it that is we have so many steps in our digital process that we're going to capture people trying to circumvent the system, right? But water break is an important part of NADCAP getting accreditation, showing that you've performed it. Because if you don't get a good water break, the process is probably going to fail at the end, right? I love this feature because people were not adhering to water break, right? Now they have to pause. They have to check this box. They have to make a conscious decision to say yes. And if it's really no, then I don't want them in my team, right? So this is a great tool and it's helped us a lot, especially on reworks, right? Because of following the water break test as an example. Here's another example of a body. This is one tank, the seal temperature. The seal tank. We're required to get the time, the temperature, and the pH. It's a requirement to demonstrate that. Steelhead already captures that information. So Randy in the morning already got the pH. Actually, my QA lab lead got the pH. Randy got the timer. In this case, it was Ryan Britt who did both. And then he actually ran the part later in the day, and that was his time. So he was 5 parts. It was 5.7 minutes. The minimum value was 5.2 for this part and 6 minutes maximum. So that was the captured of information. But again, it's all about efficiency. We entered it one time. It was entered at 6:30 in the morning, temperature and pH. This part was ran a little later in the day at 9:30 a.m. And we were able to capture it in real time. No pencil whipping. Just to show you where the source data came from. And my message here is the source comes from one place and it feeds it multiple times across the entire platform. Parts control, when I give a tour of a potentially new customer and they come into my office, they see this big giant TV screen on my wall. Okay, this is my dashboard, and we have it siloed in this case. And we have receiving, racking, online, process, invoicing, and what's in shipping. The auditor sees this, immediately one of the requirements is parts control, right? When I bought the business, there was a table, it was a sheet of plywood on these horses, basically, and everything inbound and outbound was on one table. Can't tell you how many customers, my first week in owning the business, were picking up somebody else's parts, right? There was no parts control. Or they were picking up parts that had not been done yet, right? It was just nuts. And so this demonstrates, perception is reality, you've heard that phrase. This demonstrates that we are in control. And then when I show the auditor, I say, okay, let me click on Catamount. and I can go show them the recipe at a recipe level. I can click even lower, show them the picture of the parts. We have something that we call a racking recipe, right? Because you have to rack parts in a certain way to maximize your potential success, right? If you don't rack it the right way, you could get bleed out, you can get air pockets, all kinds of problems. We do that because we want, if Tommy does it one day and Jeff does another day, and they open up Steelhead, they're gonna see how it was racked, and they're gonna rack it the same way every single time, right? My old shop, I couldn't do that. So the auditor sees this, I mean, you guys really have control of your parts, right? And so he's just flying through that section about parts control. Little other eye candies that we've added ourselves: expedite, quality critical, special racking instructions. So again, the auditor sees that. They could tell that we are very much in control of our processes. There's another section for non-conformance. It's not populated because we just archived it all. This is a quality management dashboard in Steelhead. I used this when we were getting audited. It's got parts on hold, non-conformance reports, corrective action reports, return merchandise authorizations, and parts failing specs. So this is an important part of also, especially you're trying to get a quality management approval, whether it's AS9100 or 7004 in NADCAP. This is all in Steelhead, and we're able to see the whole paper trail from the moment it failed until the moment it was fixed, right? This demonstrates that we do have not only a quality control process in place, but we have process improvement, because obviously corrective action includes what are you going to do so it doesn't happen again, right? And that's all, that paper trail is here, right? It's blank now because we don't have any issues when I printed this last Friday. I want to now transfer to a little bit of Q&A. My purpose here was to give you some real examples of what we're doing. I'm looking forward to our next audit to take it to the next level. My goal is basically to reduce that audit time, the disruptive time in my shop. So when the auditor's there, he's not there for so many days. He should be able to easily knock it out with a digital system in a very short period of time, much more than he does today. So I'm hoping to advance that ball when I go to Pittsburgh at the new user conference here in October. And I think the possibilities are there. They're very receptive to everything I presented. I've had my head-butting moments with the PRI, but we've gotten past those things, and I think we're all both on the same page right now. Do I have any questions anybody would like to ask?
I just wanted to ask, it's really impressive how much of your process you have loaded into Steelhead. What was the timeline on getting all of that information into the system?
First of all, I can tell you, let's just take it in two parts. The Steelhead implementation for us was a phased approach. We did not do a big bang. So we started in the old shop doing quoting, and then we started sales orders. And then after sales orders, we started doing QR code scanning. After that, invoicing, and then we did the NADCAP part, because the NADCAP was something we had not done. I'd say labor hours in total was about 24 to 36 total labor hours over a 45-day period to implement everything that I knew that we needed for NADCAP in order to successfully pass the audit. So that was the total time involved. But we were doing a lot of things already. The problem was that we did not have any reports yet, right? We had certs, but we didn't have the NADCAP reports. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, Steelhead, we were the first, right, for the NADCAP output reporting? Yes, Jeff says yes. So you may not have to go through the same trials and tribulations we did. Now it's a much easier process. And if I add more services, I think it's going to be much faster as well. Jeff, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a quick question. We talked a lot about the time to prepare for an audit and to complete the audit, and the drain and energy that you guys are putting on something that, frankly, customers don't really care about. They care about quality parts.
Yeah.
This is overhead of the business, and taking overhead down is a huge unlock on what you can do with that capital and your management time and energy. But how about your interaction with customers? We had another shop in Texas that went from actively avoiding quoting jobs that had really intensive certifications because they found that the cost processing the certification was just as much as the actual job,
right,
to kind of proactively pursuing those jobs, but then also putting extra traceability information on them, almost as like a marketing differentiator. Like, you ask for 5 things, I'm gonna give you 15 just to show you that I can. So I'm just curious from how the interactions are with the customer.
Yeah, you cannot measure NADCAP accreditation. Let's just take Steelhead out of it just for a moment, or an ROI based on how many NADCAP orders you get, right? You have to base it on how much your market share or your wallet share is increased as a result of everybody knowing that you're NADCAP accredited. They may not have NADCAP orders. I could tell you for a fact that we've substantially increased our number of customers because we're NADCAP accredited, but they're not sending us NADCAP jobs. We're providing them certification, right? Certificate of conformance, that's a requirement. But I can tell you in year one, when we first did the first audit, which is in 2022, in those 12 months, we got 7 NADCAP orders. 7. Now, granted, we've grown since then. We're getting a lot more on a daily and weekly basis. But I can't tell you how many customers say, oh, are you certified? And then I ask them, well, NADCAP certified, or even AS9100 certified. And I tell them, well, we are NADCAP certified. And I say, are you going to send us NADCAP orders? Oh, no, we don't do NADCAP orders. We just want to make sure we just want to know you're certified, right, or accredited, right? That's the response. So from a marketing perspective, I am milking the heck out of it, right? I do a lot of social media postings. We do a lot of work with Product Finishing Magazine, like we did with Steelhead. We do a lot of work with Corrosion and Coating Magazine. We do things on Instagram, Facebook. We really promote things. And we're going to have a meeting this week with PRI and their marketing team. I've been trying to get a hold of their marketing team for 6 months, okay? Because we were the first in the country to provide a digital output for our audits. Finally, Jay, who's the president, says, I'm going to fix that. And the next day I got a phone call from their head of marketing, right? So I think it's really important to understand there's an opportunity here for growth. It doesn't mean you're going to get more jobs that are NADCAP required jobs, but damn it, it does leave an impression that you're standing at a higher level of quality and commitment by having these accreditations, whether it's NADCAP, whether it's AS9100, or any other certification. We are certified, personally certified by Lockheed. We're personally certified by L3 Harris. We have now SpaceX coming next month to do an on-site audit. They don't like NADCAP. I'll tell you right now, SpaceX doesn't like them. I don't know what the issue is, but there's some problem there. But they're going to come on site. They're coming because we are accredited through NADCAP, because they know that we have a higher standard. Not that they want that or need that, right? So I think from a marketing perspective, it's been a huge boom for us.
All right, we have one more question here.
We are currently investing in industrial and trying to upgrade our controls, like industrial automation systems. And my question is, does Steelhead interact directly with your PLCs, or do you have some kind of SCADA system or something that?
Yes.
I'm trying to bridge the gap between how to connect it to Steelhead.
Right. So we have what's called an HMI, and also our rectifiers have a PLC as well installed. When I modernized the shop, I had them all retrofitted. Not for the purposes of immediately connecting on day one, because I had so many irons in the fire. We were dealing with 22 different vendors to stand up this new facility. I just couldn't handle anymore. And plus, to do the interconnection, it depended on if it was Steelhead involved or that producer of that equipment involved. The cost, I just didn't want to assume it at that time. I was way over budget already at that point. But yes, part of our roadmap, and I was just talking to Steelhead last night about this, is to connect from the HMI straight into Steelhead so Randy doesn't have to do the manual entry every morning. So that is absolutely part of our roadmap. I've got my RO system, my waste system, my natural gas boiler, my chiller, and my mainline controller, and my fully automated stainless steel system is fully automated, all pre-fitted with an Ethernet connection. So the plan is to eventually transfer that and direct connect it to Steelhead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's on our product roadmap. Have an API for you to directly post your sensor measurements recorded electronically into Steelhead. So.
All right, thanks. Thank you very much, Andrew.